I think it's really important for artists to like show up for each other, but also to like be there, do studio visits, help each other through ideas, and like make space for each other in ways. And I think that that's some making space for others has always been something that's been really important to me. Hi, I'm Derek Franklin. I'm an interdisciplinary artist working in Portland, Oregon, and I'm mostly working in painting and sculpture. I was born in St. Helens, Oregon, and grew up in Scappoose, Oregon. Being from Oregon, it has always been important to me to think about where I come from and coming back to things and thinking about my positionality within art and art space. Not from a family that had artists in it or educational background in the arts or even experienced art very much. I think a lot about the driving force in my studio being fear, guilt, and shame. I think that I have part of that fear, guilt, and shame also falls into like a unique puritanical feeling of how much you should work, how much labor you should put in, how much your production should be. So a lot of times as like a sculptor, if things are like not going very fast, I make paintings because I can make paintings quicker. And it's just kind of been this thing where I just want to be productive. It makes me feel good. That kind of tends to be the driving force in the studio, and also just to understand what it means to be alive, be a human, deal with like the contradictions of what it takes to survive and be alive, and also keep the people that you care about and your community. All the contradiction and gray area that's not binary in the world that we have to kind of reckon with and come together around to survive. I lived in Newark, New Jersey for a long time, and a lot of artists would be like, how are you living there? Isn't it crazy? And really, I felt really comfortable there because I was around people that were like me. Maybe their skin didn't look like me or other things, but like they were really also poor people, and they were kind of surrounded by the same things that poor people where I came from were, which is like a lot of addiction, violence, feeling alienated from the rest of the world. To like find a meaningful life where you feel like you have autonomy, or you feel like you have a possibility to even help other people, was part of my wanting to escape. I went for it with the art. I thought it was a wild, maybe bad idea, but it like really saved my life because it was the first time ever in my life that I felt like I was in a thing that I like understood, a connectivity to people that were also into it like almost instantly, and felt at home. And I felt so curious about it that I could like sustain long-term like investment into it. I was excited about other artists. I wanted to like make space and support other artists. And that's kind of when I started to have that feeling that I was like, I really want to do this thing and go for it. And then I was like, I really should like go back to Oregon and like see if I can help do that for others. I've been mostly painting the last few months because the weather's been not so great. My painting really comes from this idea of the way images are produced. And not just like they're like going through a 1 hour photo or any of that kind of thing, but how they're constructed and made. I really come to painting in that from kind of an image theory way, and thinking about photographs and how things are composed to make us think certain ideas. And I've always been like pretty suspicious of painting, and like it's a illusionistic way in which it can be used for manipulation, whether that's propaganda or ideas that are being pushed through Renaissance paintings or all these different things. But now I think that like there's a place for painting that's different, right? Photography is starting to like hold that space that painting once did. And we consume images in a matter of seconds over and over again. And we rarely like look in there and say, wait, what's going on in that back corner back there? Why is that? Wait, what is that in the shadows back there? What I'm curious about in painting is like making you have to move your body to like take in the image. So like having paintings that you have to engage with at certain different focal lengths as a human. And so you have to walk up, walk back, which also like slows viewing time, which I think is like really important, is like I want to slow the scroll. And I'm working on some sculptural projects. A few are longer term ones and a few shorter terms. I'm currently working on a bronze flute project, which is a series of recorder flutes that go floor to ceiling, that are accompanied with a sound piece, which I'm working with a flute player on. And that sound piece is a durational, kind of atonal flute piece that's based on medieval chants that people would chant at the end of life when a family member, friend, or foe was at the end of their life. You would sing these chants to help them pass on into the afterlife. In some of my recent sculptures, I used wood to create these kind of coat rack forms that I saw as being like both like in the form of a coat rack, but also very like figurative and gestural, in the way that like when you're living inside your home, you like get a coat rack to be helpful to you, right? And then you like put a coat on there and you're like, oh, that's so nice. I like put my coat on this coat rack, and then you put like another one, and then like you put a bag on there, and then you like forget about those, but you like have another coat. Or like in Oregon, there's like so many different coats you might need for rain or whatever. And then pretty soon that like coat rack just gets like kind of overwhelmed, and then it might fall over once in a while because you like just really like pushed it to the limits of its like utilitarian use value. When I think about that, I really think about like what we do to people around us in a certain way. Yeah, so they're kind of like a grouping of these coat racks that are also kind of like a grouping of awkward humans in middle school that don't quite know how to be together. And they're like kind of weighed down by these things that are just like remnants from our everyday lives that like confuse us why they're even there. I think Southeast Cooper is like really interesting to me in a lot of ways. I'll say that like it maybe started as like a selfish venture in a certain way. I was like feeling pretty COVID fatigued and like needed more people in my life, needed to see more things. And so I decided that with this building that was empty where I lived, that I should like create a gallery in it. When an artist works with Southeast Cooper, they have an exhibition in our gallery space, which is about between 500 and 600 square foot gallery space. Often the artists will stay with me and my family, and sometimes they have family as well that will also stay in an apartment. I wanted to normalize people looking at art in spaces that they were comfortable in, that was like associated with family or like a domestic living. It wasn't like going to an urban center into a white box where you had to kind of like break through a barrier to see, but you were already in a setting that like allowed you to kind of come in. You could bring children, and like the children also didn't have to like stay inside the white box and be like good to like make the parents comfortable and make them uncomfortable, so they could like run out, be in grass, do all those things. And then when I showed local artists, I really wanted to think about what can I actually do that's helpful to them. Curators at institutions or commercial galleries in other cities, they all have a much bigger bottom line than anybody here, and they are willing and want to take risks, but how large is that risk? How deep is it going to affect them if their risk doesn't work totally? And I think because that's like what's really important for artists to be able to do is like do things with other spaces, but it is always still a collaboration that has to be like at least somewhat mutually beneficial to everybody.